Your genes tell a story nobody asked you to tell. Right now, as you're listening to this, your cells are reading a 4 billion-year-old instruction manual written in a language nobody speaks anymore. And somewhere inside that manual, there's a sentence. Just one. One sentence that changes everything. One sentence that can transform you from invisible to unmissable, from ordinary to undeniable. This is what happened to Peter Dinklage, and it didn't happen because of his parents. It didn't happen because of his bloodline. It happened because of one mutation, one point, one swap of a single chemical letter in a gene called FGFR3, and the world bent around him. But here's what almost nobody talks about. 80% of the time, when this mutation shows up, it shows up from nowhere. No family history, no inheritance waiting in the wings. Two completely healthy parents, a roll of the genetic dice, and suddenly their son is born different. Their son is born marked. Their son is born with something the world won't let him forget. And yet, in Peter Dinklage's case, that same mutation that medical textbooks treat as a limitation became his superpower. It became his passport to a stage. It became the thing that made him impossible to ignore. If you're watching this and you carry this mutation, or someone in your family does, you've ever wondered why one random genetic event can ripple across an entire life and change its trajectory completely? What's coming in the next 10 minutes will shift how you see yourself. This video goes deep on the genetics, the ancestry, the odds, and the transformation. Subscribe so you don't miss it, because understanding the science behind your own body changes how you move through the world. But to understand how Peter Dinklage went from an unknown actor to a global icon, you first have to understand what his body is actually doing. Because the mutation that changed his life isn't a flaw in the normal blueprint. It's an overwrite. It's a gain of function. And once you understand what that means at the molecular level, the rest of his story makes a different kind of sense. We're going to follow the mutation itself, down to the exact nucleotide where it happens. We're going to follow the protein that it creates and what that protein does to bone growth. We're going to follow the odds of how 80% of these mutations appear spontaneously, out of nowhere, with no warning. And by the time we finish, you're going to understand why one genetic accident became the foundation of one of the greatest acting careers of the 21st century. And you're going to see yourself differently, whether you carry this mutation or not. Let's start with the gene itself. It sits on chromosome 4. It's called FGFR3, fibroblast growth factor receptor 3. Under normal circumstances, this gene produces a protein that tells your bones when to stop growing. It's a brake. It's a regulatory signal that keeps skeletal development in check. Your bones need brakes. Without them, you'd grow into the sky. Without them, the human body would distort beyond function. The FGFR3 protein is evolution's way of saying, enough, stop here. You're now a complete human being. And then the mutation comes. Here's where it gets precise. Peter Dinklage, like 98% of all people with achondroplasia, carries one of two specific mutations. They're so common, so consistent, across the human population that geneticists have named them. The most frequent one is called G1138A, a single guanine nucleotide replaced by adenine, a one-letter swap in a 4 billion letter alphabet. That swap causes one amino acid change in the FGFR3 protein. Glycine becomes arginine at position 380, one substitution, one swap, and the entire protein changes its behavior. Now here's what makes this a gain of function mutation instead of a loss. The protein doesn't break, the protein doesn't weaken, the protein becomes hyperactive, constantly active. Constitutively active is the term geneticists use. It means the brake is jammed on. It's not just slowing down bone growth anymore, it's aggressively suppressing it, pushing back against the signals that normally allow long bones to extend. And the result is what you see: shortened limbs, a torso of relatively normal size, a head that's proportionally larger, the phenotype that defined Peter Dinklage's body from birth. Pause for a second. Look at your hands. Imagine being born and your bones received a signal from the very beginning. Growth, yes, but measured, limited, precise. That's what achondroplasia is. Not a disease that progresses, not a condition that worsens over time, a static reshaping of the growth blueprint, locked in from conception. Here's where the odds become remarkable. 80% of people with achondroplasia, 8 out of every 10, have two completely healthy parents. No achondroplasia in the family tree, no genetic predisposition hiding in the bloodline. This mutation came from nothing. It appeared spontaneously in the sperm of Peter Dinklage's father at the moment of conception. A random event, a quantum-level accident, a 1 in 10,000 genetic coin. Flip that landed on his side. According to research from the NCBI and multiple population genetic studies conducted between 2015 and 2024, these spontaneous mutations are preferentially inherited on the paternal chromosome. They happen almost exclusively during spermatogenesis, the process of sperm production, and they increase with paternal age. Men over 50 are between 12 and 15 times more likely to father a child with achondroplasia than men under 20. Think about that for a second. The mutation that shaped Peter Dinklage's entire existence wasn't written into his mother's body, wasn't waiting in his father's childhood cells. It happened at the moment his father's sperm cell divided. A spontaneous rewriting, a new story beginning. Peter Dinklage was born on June 11th, 1969, in the Jersey Shore area of New Jersey. His father was John Carl Dinklage, an insurance salesman. His mother was Diane Dinklage, a German-Irish music teacher who taught elementary school. His older brother Jonathan was born without achondroplasia. Jonathan would grow to normal height. Jonathan's bones would receive the standard growth signals. Jonathan would move through the world unmarked by the mutation that marked his younger brother. But Peter's arrival was different. Peter's body carried the one genetic change that would either define his life or free it, depending on how he chose to respond. At 4 feet 5 inches, 53 inches of height, Peter Dinklage would be smaller than 99.5% of adult males in the United States. But he would be, precisely, genetically, programmed to that height from the moment of conception. His intelligence would be normal. His life expectancy would be normal. His capacity for ambition, for performance, for transformation would be entirely uncompromised by the mutation that shaped his skeleton. And here's where the story takes the turn that most people never expect. Audiences would forget what they were watching and simply believe the character. That was the assumption. That was the invisible ceiling. That was the world Peter Dinklage entered as an actor. He made his film debut in 1995 in a black comedy called Living in Oblivion, a small role, barely a credit. And then he waited. He studied theater at Bennington College. He performed in off-Broadway productions. He carried the mutation in his body and the weight of a world's low expectations in his mind. And then, in 2003, came The Station Agent, a film that treated Peter Dinklage not as a curiosity or a special case, but as a fully realized human being with interior depth, conflict, romance, fragility, humor, and power. He won the Independent Spirit Award. Critics began to notice, but even then, he was not the first choice for roles. He was the unlikely choice, the alternative consideration, the actor they cast when they took a risk. And then, in 2011, Peter Dinklage got a role in an HBO series based on a massive fantasy epic, a role that would run for 8 seasons and define a generation of television, the role of Tyrion Lannister in Game of Thrones. And something shifted. Here's what's remarkable. Tyrion Lannister, the character Peter Dinklage portrayed, also has achondroplasia in the books and on the screen. The character's dwarfism is part of his history, his family conflict, his place in the Actors Guild Award. He became the part of Game of Thrones that, for many viewers, was the most emotionally intelligent, the most human, the most truthful. The mutation that was supposed to be a limitation had become an anchor point for authenticity. The genetic accident that should have kept him invisible had made him visible in a way that no amount of conventional beauty could have accomplished. His body, shaped by that single swap on chromosome 4, carried a credibility, a specificity, a realness that audiences responded to like nothing else. But here's where the story gets even stranger. Because once Peter Dinklage became visible, once he proved that a person with achondroplasia could not just participate in mainstream entertainment, but could receive with no family history, that spontaneous genetic event that happens during spermatogenesis and nobody can predict or control, became associated with possibility instead of limitation. His son, born to Peter and his wife Erica Schmidt, also has achondroplasia. The inheritance pattern held true, a 50% chance, and the genetic dice rolled in that direction. But that son is growing up in a world where Peter Dinklage, his father, is already a legend, is already a proof point, is already evidence that the mutation that carries through his body can lead somewhere unexpected, can lead somewhere triumphant. The narrative has changed. The story has been rewritten. One person's transformation changed what the mutation means for everyone who carries it. Peter Dinklage has since appeared in films like X-Men Days of Future Past. He voiced a character in Ice Age Continental Drift. He appeared in the Avengers Infinity War as Eitri, the Dwarven King, a role that seemed almost written as a mirror of his own journey. A character of extraordinary power and importance placed in a world where his size had never been the measure of his significance. His net worth has climbed to $25 million. His career has moved beyond television into film, into voice acting, into roles of increasing complexity and depth. And every single one of those roles, every single performance, traces back to one mutation, one point, one chemical substitution that happened spontaneously in his father's body at the moment Peter Dinklage was conceived. Here's what scientists still don't fully understand. Why do some people with achondroplasia, the same genetic mutation as Peter Dinklage, live lives of limited opportunity? Why do some face discrimination, isolation, and barriers in ways that seem designed to minimize them? And yet others, like Peter Dinklage, become global icons? The answer isn't in the mutation. The mutation is the same. The answer is in the response, in the refusal to accept the world's low expectations, in the decision to see the genetic accident not as a disability, but as a distinctive feature that makes you unmissable. In 2012, when Peter Dinklage was asked if he saw himself as a spokesman for the rights of little people, he said something remarkable. He said every person his size has a different life, a different history, different ways of dealing with it. Just because he's seemingly okay with it doesn't mean he can preach how to be okay with it. But he said he's been viewed as a role model. And that role model status came not because he overcame achondroplasia. You don't overcome a static genetic condition, but because he transformed what it means to carry it. If you're watching this and you carry achondroplasia or any genetic condition that the world has tried to make you feel ashamed of or limited by, here's what Peter Dinklage's story is really telling you. The mutation is not the story. You are the story. The genetic event that shaped your body is not your destiny. Your response to it is your refusal to accept anyone else's definition of what's possible for you. Your decision to move through the world as if you belong, because you do. Because the mutation that 80% of people receive with no warning, no family history, no genetic inheritance to blame, that mutation shaped one of the most celebrated performers of the 21st century, and it could shape you too. But not by overcoming it, not by denying it, by claiming it, by stepping into the specificity of it, by making the world see not a limitation, but a point of view that nobody else carries. That's what Peter Dinklage did. That's what the mutation taught him. That's what his story is offering to everyone who carries the same genetic event and has been told it was a burden. Your genes tell a story nobody asked you to tell. But you get to decide whether that story is tragedy or triumph. You get to decide whether you're going to live inside the world's expectations or redefine them entirely. Peter Dinklage chose the second. And the mutation that 80% of people receive spontaneously with no genetic inheritance became the foundation of his power. If this story moved you, if any part of it connected, hit the like button. It helps more people discover their own genetic story, their own hidden inheritance, their own proof that chance and choice can intersect in ways that change everything. Comment which part hit hardest for you, the science of the mutation itself, the odds of it appearing spontaneously, or the transformation from limitation to legend. And if you know someone else who carries achondroplasia or has felt defined by a genetic condition the world tried to make them ashamed of, send this to them. They deserve to know that the mutation can mean something different. I go even deeper into genetic transformation stories like this every week. How one spontaneous mutation ripples across an entire life and changes its trajectory in ways nobody predicted. Subscribe so the next one finds you. Because your inheritance didn't come to you by accident. It came here by design, and it got you somewhere unexpected. Carry your inheritance well. It came here by chance, and it got you somewhere unexpected.